What you're about to hear isn't the heroic, polished version of jungle warfare preserved in official archives. According to military medical reports and the declassified testimonies of deep recon snipers who operated in Southeast Asia between 1966 and 1971, the deadliest threats during long-range missions were not always Viet Cong scouts or hidden booby traps. Many of the most feared wounds came from something far smaller, something no rifle could keep away. In the humid darkness of the rainforest, an invisible army moved silently across bark, water, and human flesh. Silent. Sudden. Relentless. And for the men who walked point through swamps and triple canopy vegetation, these organisms were not background details, they were enemies that followed you everywhere. Pay close attention, because this is the side of the war few veterans speak openly about. Not because it was classified, but because it was humiliating, painful, and psychologically corrosive. The jungle didn't just surround them, it invaded them. It crawled beneath their uniforms, penetrated tiny cuts, entered their bloodstream, fed on their exhaustion, and waited patiently for the slightest slip in discipline. A sniper could plan for enemy patrols. He could anticipate artillery. But no amount of training prepared him for parasites that appeared without warning and turned the body itself into a battlefield. To understand what these men endured, you need to picture the conditions: missions lasting up to 10 days without extraction, full silence protocols, sleeping inside collapsed vegetation, moving through water that smelled of decay and iron. In these environments, a single mosquito bite could escalate into fever dreams that sabotaged marksmanship. A small leech hidden between the toes could undermine balance during an uphill crawl. A microscopic larva could burrow into the skin and remain there for days before the man even felt it, but by then, the infection might already be spreading. Every sniper carried a rifle, none carried immunity. And this is where the story becomes more psychological than tactical. Veteran statements reveal how the fear of parasites slowly became ritualized into daily routines: checking boots before stepping in, burning small insects off the skin with heated metal, cutting open sores with field knives, and whispering to teammates to check the back of my neck because no one trusted their own senses anymore. The forest had a way of disguising its attacks as irritation, as fatigue, as weakness, until the moment it turned into something much darker. Something worth reporting. Something worth documenting. So today, we're diving into the most feared, most disruptive, and most psychologically devastating parasites encountered by US forest snipers and recon teams in Southeast Asia. Not as a list of biological curiosities, but as a sequence of hostile encounters, each one escalating in intensity, each one shaping how these men navigated the jungle, how they slept, how they fought, and how they survived. These are the parasites that rewrote the rules of deep recon warfare, the ones that left scars invisible in after-action reports but unforgettable in the memories of the men who carried them home. They called them minor threats in the earliest field manuals: irritants, nuisances, obstacles to be managed rather than feared. But every sniper who ventured deep into the lowland swamps of the Mekong or the shadowed ravines of the Annamite Mountains quickly learned the truth: nothing in the jungle was minor. Every organism had a mission, and sometimes that mission aligned perfectly with the jungle's intent to break the invader from the inside out. The first and most deceptively simple enemy on this list was the tropical leech. Not the harmless kind found in freshwater streams back home, but a species adapted to warfare long before humans arrived. These leeches didn't wait for you to step into a river. They hunted from tree branches, dropping silently onto exposed skin during night movements. Veterans described a sensation like a warm raindrop sliding under the collar, only this raindrop attached itself, spread its jaw-like mouth, and injected an anticoagulant that kept the blood flowing freely. You didn't feel the bite, one sniper wrote in a post-war interview, just the aftermath, the slow, hot trickle running down your ribs. Technically, a leech could not kill a man. But tactically, it could ruin him. Imagine a sniper preparing for a shot after 2 days without sleep, his heartbeat slow and controlled, breath steady. Then imagine blood pooling inside his sleeve or boots. Imagine the smell: iron-rich, unmistakable, detectable even by human senses. Blood attracted insects, which attracted predators, which created noise, which shattered camouflage. A single leech could expose an entire team. And in rare cases, when one slipped into the nasal cavity during a muddy infiltration, it could stay there for days, swelling and obstructing breathing until field medics cut it out. But the jungle had quieter, more insidious attackers. Next came the hookworms and roundworms hiding in the soil. Every time a sniper went prone to glass an enemy position, to wait out a patrol, or to sleep in the silent hours before dawn, the ground beneath him shifted with life. Invisible larvae penetrated microscopic abrasions in the skin, often between the toes or behind the knees. Within hours they caused itching, within days they caused anemia. And anemia was a sniper's real enemy: trembling hands, blurred vision, delayed decision-making. "Your mind feels like it's moving through wet sand," a recon scout wrote in 1969. It was the kind of impairment no one saw coming until it was too late. The psychological effect was subtle but devastating. Men began to question whether the fatigue they felt came from the mission or from something inside them. Whether their sudden irritability or confusion was stress, or an organism feeding off their blood supply. In still moments, lying camouflaged under layers of wet vegetation, some swore they could feel movement beneath their skin, a crawling sensation, real or imagined, that gnawed at their composure. The jungle thrived on that doubt. And yet, the parasites grew more aggressive the deeper teams traveled. One of the most disturbing threats was the mango fly larva, known for its ability to turn a minor cut into a living nest. A sniper might scratch a mosquito bite, reopen an old scrape, or brush against a thorn, and by nightfall, a larva could already be inside. These organisms didn't simply feed, they developed within the flesh, pushing toward the surface as they grew. Veterans described a pulsing sensation, like a heartbeat under the skin that wasn't theirs. In field conditions, extraction required improvisation, heated metal, pressure from rifle magazines, or in extreme cases, slicing the flesh open with a utility knife. These stories rarely appeared in official reports, but they circulated through sniper schools like whispered warnings: "Don't let anything inside you. The jungle takes its time." By the end of a week-long operation, every man carried more than rations and ammunition. He carried the memory of every bite, every sting, every burn. He carried the fear that something might already be growing beneath the surface, and that he wouldn't know until it was too late. That fear shaped behavior. It shaped caution. It shaped the mental landscape of war in ways bullets never could. By the midpoint of most deep recon missions, the human enemy often felt like the lesser threat. Viet Cong trackers could be evaded, ambushes could be mapped, and booby traps, though terrifying, at least followed patterns. But the parasites of the Southeast Asian jungle didn't negotiate, didn't hesitate, and didn't obey any tactical logic. They struck whenever temperature, moisture, and opportunity aligned. And for snipers who operated days behind enemy lines, these organisms had the luxury of time to weaken, time to destabilize, time to break down even the strongest operators from within. Among the most psychologically destructive adversaries was the tumble-like botfly variant that haunted certain deep forest pockets between Laos and central Vietnam. While not identical to the African species more commonly known, this regional variant followed a similarly horrifying strategy. It used other insects, often mosquitoes, as delivery systems. A sniper might slap away a mosquito, thinking the irritation ended with the sting, but in reality, the mosquito had implanted something far more sinister beneath the surface. Within days, a raised welt appeared. Then the welt breathed. Literally. A tiny aperture formed, allowing the larva to draw air as it grew. It was like the jungle itself had left a door open inside me, one former Marine scout said decades later, describing how he felt the creature shift when he strained to pull a trigger. Removing these larvae in the field became a macabre ritual. Some men suffocated them with tobacco paste, others applied the wax from Sirachan candles. The unlucky ones were forced to cut them out with the same knives they used to slice bamboo for camouflage. The pain was secondary. What truly broke men was the violation, the knowledge that the jungle wasn't just cutting them, biting them, or draining them. It was inhabiting them. But the threats didn't end at the skin. The deeper the teams pushed through nutrient-rich swamps, the more they encountered a microscopic force that military doctors privately called the mission killer, a cocktail of protozoal infections capable of dismantling a sniper's mental clarity within hours. Amoebic parasites from stagnant puddles clung to canteens, slipped into open mouths during night crawls, or contaminated even the most disciplined water purification. The symptoms rarely began violently. Instead, they arrived like whispers: mild stomach cramps, a tightening in the lower abdomen, a faint pressure behind the eyes. Then came fever spikes, hallucination-like fatigue, and difficulty distinguishing distant movement from imagined shapes. For a sniper, this was catastrophic. The jungle was already a hall of illusions, shadows moving like figures, wind imitating footsteps, branches snapping without clear direction. Add a parasite-induced fever, and the line between reality and threat dissolved completely. Some men later admitted they delayed taking a shot because they weren't sure whether the silhouette ahead was a soldier or a tree stump swaying in the heat. Others confessed they fired when they shouldn't have, driven by a sudden panic they couldn't explain at the time. War crimes investigations occasionally referenced environmental impairment, a sanitized phrase that concealed far darker physiological truths. Then there were the schistosome parasites, razor-thin flukes that lived in contaminated waters and entered the bloodstream through the skin during river crossings. They left no bite mark, no sting, no warning. Their presence was known only after they settled into organs and triggered cycles of fever, abdominal swelling, and debilitating pain. Recon teams reported cases where men collapsed mid-movement, unable to hold their rifles steady as their core muscles spasmed uncontrollably. Field medics often blamed dehydration or exhaustion, but post-mission diagnoses painted a clearer picture: the jungle had injected them with an enemy that couldn't be dodged or outmaneuvered. And through all this, the oppressive humidity amplified the psychological weight. Moisture softened skin and made it easier for organisms to penetrate. Sweat washed away protective ointments in minutes. The air itself felt contaminated, a warm, sticky reminder that the jungle was always pressing inward, always testing the body for weaknesses. You stop trusting your own flesh, one Army sniper recalled. You start wondering what's alive under your skin, and what's just your nerves lying to you. By the third or fourth day, veterans described a specific expression they recognized in teammates: the jungle stare. It wasn't fear, not exactly. It was the exhaustion of fighting an unseen enemy, of knowing that every itch might be a threat, every cramp a warning, every drop of water a risk. It was the dawning realization that the mission's outcome depended as much on biology as on tactics, and that the body could betray you long before the enemy did. As the parasites grew more sophisticated, more invasive, the war became less about surviving firefights and more about surviving the environment itself. By the fourth stage of a deep jungle mission, something shifted inside every man. The body was no longer just fatigued, it was under siege. Muscles tightened without warning, skin inflamed at the mere touch of wet foliage, and sleep became a dangerous luxury. This was when the most unpredictable and psychologically destructive parasites emerged, the ones that didn't just weaken snipers, they rewired their survival instincts. At the top of this grim hierarchy stood the jungle mites, microscopic enemies nearly impossible to detect. These weren't the mild chiggers encountered in temperate forests. Southeast Asia's species thrived in rotting leaf litter, feeding on decomposing organic matter until a warm-blooded body brushed past. Then they latched on in clusters, behind knees, around the waistline, inside the soft folds of the armpits. Their bites delivered a toxin that triggered violent allergic reactions. Skin erupted into burning welts, each one swelling into a blister that felt like fire beneath the surface. For most soldiers, this would be a medical concern. For a sniper, it was disaster. The itching was unbearable, the kind that didn't fade, didn't dull, didn't allow stillness. More than one veteran recalled lying motionless for hours, waiting for the perfect shot, only to feel the sudden electric jolt of a mite bite under the beltline. The instinct to scratch was immediate. But scratching meant movement. Movement meant detection. Detection meant death. One sniper described it simply: it was like being tortured by something you couldn't see. But the mites were only the opening act. The real nightmare came from the tropical rat lungworm, a parasite carried by slugs and snails that thrived during monsoon seasons. Recon teams moved quietly across forest floors slick with decaying vegetation, where the translucent trail of a slug could mark the difference between safety and neurological catastrophe. If even a microscopic trace of larval mucus contaminated water, rations, or an open cut, the parasite entered the body, and once inside, it migrated to the central nervous system. The early symptoms were subtle: stiff neck, sensitivity to light, a tightening across the temples. Then came the migraines, blinding, crushing, impossible to ignore. "It felt like a steel rod being pushed through my skull," recalled a ranger who suffered an infection during a 1970 incursion near the Cambodian border. The pain didn't just limit physical performance, it warped perception. A sniper's most precious asset, mental clarity, collapsed under waves of neurological distress. Some men reported auditory distortions, others saw phantom movement in the brush. A few admitted they no longer trusted their own triggers. And yet, deeper in the forest, an even darker threat awaited: parasitic fungi that colonized the skin itself. These weren't the mild rashes documented in basic training manuals. In Southeast Asia, fungal spores thrived in environments where sweat had no chance to evaporate. They infiltrated the skin's outer layers, forming circular lesions that cracked, bled, and spread with alarming speed. Under constant friction from gear straps and camouflage netting, these injuries tore open, exposing living tissue. Veterans recalled the smell, a sour, sweet rot that clung to uniforms and turned every movement into a reminder that the jungle was devouring them 1 inch at a time. Field medics treated these infections with whatever antifungal powders survived the humidity, but much of the burden fell on the men themselves. Snipers described scraping away dead skin with ration spoons, torching affected areas with heated steel, or applying makeshift poultices made from crushed plants, anything to slow the spread and remain operational. The pain dulled focus, blurred vision, and broke discipline. And the psychological cost was worse: the creeping realization that the jungle didn't need bullets to neutralize them. But the apex predator of the parasitic world, the one even seasoned veterans struggled to speak about, was something both physical and existential: the constant erosion of bodily trust. By week's end, every sensation was suspect. Every itch could mean infestation. Every cramp could signal internal damage. Every moment of thirst could end in a contaminated sip. Snipers who once prided themselves on stoicism found themselves monitoring their bodies with obsessive precision, counting heartbeats, checking wounds, examining sweat for discoloration. The mind narrowed to a single question: is this the parasite that breaks me? This internal warfare reshaped the very concept of combat readiness. Even the most elite operators, trained to withstand exhaustion, hunger, and fear, struggled against enemies they couldn't shoot, couldn't predict, couldn't intimidate. The jungle fought with biology, patience, and silence. And in that silence, many men felt themselves slowly unravel. Still, the mission demanded movement. And the deeper they pushed, the more the forest revealed its final, most devastating weapons. By the final days of a deep reconnaissance mission, when boots had softened from constant moisture and uniforms carried the sour heaviness of rot, the human body became a map of every enemy the jungle had sent against it. But the worst parasite, the one veterans recalled with the slow, measured tone reserved for trauma, was neither a worm nor a larva. It was the cumulative breakdown of the body's defenses, the moment when the war outside fused with the war inside, leaving snipers suspended in a state of pure, relentless vulnerability. It began with scrub typhus mites, carriers of a pathogen that struck with surgical precision. Their bites were insignificant, almost polite compared to leeches or fungal lesions. But buried within them was a bacterium that sought out blood vessels, inflaming them until the entire vascular system felt poisoned from within. Fever arrived like a punishment. Temperatures soared past 104 degrees Fahrenheit, hallucinations blurred the borders of reality, and the body trembled with uncontrollable chills. For a sniper lying camouflaged in the undergrowth, this was a catastrophe of the highest order. Muscle spasms caused accidental movements. Sweat pooled beneath the chin, dripping onto foliage with a rhythm far too audible for stealth. Eyes refused to focus on distant silhouettes. One veteran report described a man who began whispering enemy coordinates into the dirt, unaware that no one was listening. His team later carried him out on an improvised stretcher woven from bamboo and poncho liners. He spent weeks in a field hospital but never returned to the line. The infection healed, the fear did not. And still, the jungle hadn't finished. The deeper teams traveled, the more they encountered filarial worms carried by night-biting insects. These microscopic invaders slipped through the bloodstream like threads of living shadow, settling inside the lymphatic system. Swelling came next, grotesque, disfiguring swelling that turned ankles into swollen knots and legs into rigid, throbbing pillars. Recon snipers depended on mobility, this parasite stole it silently. Every step burned.
Every crouch felt like bones grinding against inflamed tissue.
Worst of all, the swelling made silence impossible. One man described the sensation as carrying your own heartbeat in your legs, a constant pulsing that reverberated through the soil with every shift of weight.
These weren't just infections.
They were psychological detonations.
Each new ailment eroded confidence.
Each strange symptom stirred suspicion. Paranoia thrived in the moments between engagements, moments when the jungle hummed with life but the body felt like it was dying piece by piece.
Men who once operated with mechanical precision found themselves lost in loops of internal dread. Is this fever temporary? Is this swelling permanent? What is breathing beneath my skin right now?
But the final blow, the one that followed many veterans long after the war ended, was something no medical manual could fully capture: the lingering sense that the jungle never truly left their bodies. Even decades later, survivors described phantom itching along old scars, sudden spikes of heat that mimicked tropical fevers, and the persistent unease that something microscopic still waited inside them. Trauma rarely announces itself with clarity. It sows its own parasitic threads into memory, feeding quietly over the years until a smell of damp earth or a humid summer night brings everything back. In post-war interviews, psychologists noted a recurring pattern among snipers who operated in Southeast Asia: a distrust of their own biology. Many avoided lakes and rivers for the rest of their lives.
Others compulsively checked their skin for irregularities.
Some admitted they could not sleep unless every window was open, as if craving airflow after years spent suffocating inside wet, contaminated jungles. Their wounds had healed, but their awareness of vulnerability had not.
Because in the end, these parasites didn't merely damage flesh. They reshaped identity. They dismantled the illusion of invincibility essential to elite units.
They forced men to confront the terrifying truth that in the jungle, survival wasn't controlled by discipline, training, or skill. It depended on forces too small to see, too silent to anticipate, too patient to outrun. This was the hidden front of the war. A front fought in fevers and lesions, in trembling hands and clouded minds. It left no medals, no citations, no parades. But it carved into these men an understanding far deeper than tactics, that sometimes, the most relentless enemy is the environment itself, and the body that must withstand it. To speak of these parasites is not to sensationalize them, it is to acknowledge the invisible suffering carried by those who moved through Southeast Asia's darkest terrain. Their endurance wasn't just physical, it was existential.
And long after the missions ended, the jungle's quiet, biological violence remained etched beneath their skin, an unspoken chapter in the story of war.